and welcome to another episode of The Vinny Show. I'm your host, Vinny from South Philly, and today's guest is Jim Dattilo, game writer, friend, overall awesome person. Jim, I'm so delighted to have you today, and I can't wait to hear about what's going on.
Thanks, Vin. I'm glad to be here. So I'm Jim Dattilo. I've been a writer for the past 10 years, mostly writing for video games, things that you might find on Steam or uh, on the iTunes or on the Android Google Play Store. Um, and mostly what I write is interactive fiction. So these are stories that you read. They kind of look like a book, but you get to make choices. And as you make the choices, the game changes to uh, account for the choices that you've made. Um, so it's kind of like when we were growing up, they had books called Choose Your Own Adventure novels that you could, go and buy. And these are kind of like those on steroids. So these are the kind of books where, as you're making your character, like really a lot of the game changes, and it really tracks every decision that you make and tries to make it a more immersive experience for people. Um, and so I've been doing that for about 10 years, and really enjoy it. So.
Jim, that's great. I remember the good old days when we didn't have all the technology we do today. Somehow we still had a ton of fun doing it, and this is a good callback to those days. And I like the fact that you can kind of choose your, for lack of a better word, destiny, and think that changes the whole dynamics of what you're doing. So that's pretty cool. Now, Jim, let's take it back a little bit. So, how did you get started? What gave you the motivation to start doing that?
Well, I actually started writing before I was interested in interactive fiction. I was writing short stories, trying to get published, trying to get an agent. Kind of the traditional route for people who write, just normal books that you'd see on Amazon or go to Barnes and Nobles. Um, but then when I first got an iPhone, I went on the App Store and actually saw a game that kind of piqued my curiosity, and it was like basically like a choose your own adventure book. Um, and at the end of the book, I think I read the whole book in like 2 days. Like I was just completely blown away by it. And at the end, they said, if you're interested, look us up and you can write for us. Um, they didn't have a lot of people writing for them. So I pitched them an idea, um, and actually they had me doing it kind of like as a more amateur or hobby kind of uh, part of their company. But my game got pretty popular, and after I wrote my first book through them, they actually allowed me to write for their professional label. Um, so but I actually started writing two books at the same time. So I started writing the sequel to the first game as I was also writing the second game, and that's kind of continued. So like right now, I'm actually working on three different projects,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's a lot of work, but um, it's like some people often say to me, "Do you get writer's block, or do you ever like have burnout?" And I kind of say I always have the opposite. I just don't have enough time to get all the writing out of me. Like I wish I had more time in the day, but um, I just love doing it. So.
That's fantastic. And I like to write on the side too. I get the block. I have to really force myself. It's not good, and it really puts me in a position where I'm like, I get mad at myself. But on the other hand, it's good to hear that you have the type of situation where it's actually almost the opposite. Um, and so, bring us back to the early days, going back to the role playing days. What kind of impact has that had on your adult life?
Yeah, so I mean, as I was growing up, I was huge into games like Dungeons and Dragons and Vampire the Masquerade. You know, just games where you could sit around the table and kind of, build a story with your friends. Um, and so that always inspired my writing because I wanted to reach out to people that maybe, didn't have access to a table of friends or wanted to do it, solo. And especially, you know, like during the pandemic when, we couldn't sit around the table with friends. Um, I noticed that a lot of these books became even more popular because people still wanted that experience, but uh, they couldn't go to their friend's house for a little while. Um, and also, as a role player, as somebody who used to um, really get so heavily involved in that world, it inspired the types of stories that I wanted to tell. So, my two main games that I've written are it's a zombie apocalypse book or game and a vampire game. So, I love horror, I love science fiction. So, those are the worlds that I like to build and I like to get other people to experience.
Now, Jim, just so in case they missed it in the beginning, can you just remind people where they could find that work?
Um, so if you Google my name, actually you'll find all of the titles that I've written. Um, Also, if you so my the first game I ever wrote was called Zombie Exodus. And so if you actually go to that, zombieexodus.com, that has links to everything that I've done. Um,
And
yeah, so
obviously,
that's the easiest.
and we'll have links in the description as well. But just to in case anyone's listening. All right, so and it's interesting you bring up COVID, and this seems to be a pattern in a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, is that something happened during that time that then rerouted what they were doing, or brought more enthusiasm, more creativity out of them. So all the horrible things that have happened due to COVID and all the loss of life and terrible tragedies, you find these little things that these little nuggets of inspiration, things that are popping up that people have been able to turn things around, show their resilience, and take that as an opportunity to provide something that's interesting for others.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was also a point in time where, um, people were afraid, um, and they were looking for outlets. So for me, writing has always been my outlet. I remember when, I had personal struggles, I would, go into my room, jump on my computer, and write. And somehow that was a very almost like therapeutic time for me. And I know that's true of others. Um, I hear it all the time that people say that, they write it in period where maybe they feel down or some people do it when they're feeling just excited and they need to get the words out. And I also think that, um, especially during COVID, people were looking for these different outlets. So they would go online, they would um, read, they would contact me and ask me questions, and they would say, I read your games. How do I do this? And I never feel like there's a competition. Um, I'm happy to help people. I've mentored some people that are actually now starting to publish their first games. So yeah, I think out of all the kind of negative that happened, it was a time for people to kind of like look and say, well, how can I make this situation? How can anything good come from this situation? So yeah, and I had a lot of fans that you know, from before that period of time. And, thankfully they stuck with me and, um, you know, it's, I've really enjoyed getting to meet them and talk to them, and use all the different social media outlets to engage with all of my followers. So
That's fantastic. I mean, it's all about community building, one way or another, and it's really nice to hear that you've been able to kind of mentor others and spread some of your knowledge and and just uplifting other people. So that's really great. So let's talk for a minute on what would you say is one of or a few of your most gratifying accomplishments.
so a few years ago, I had the opportunity um, to write for a company that I've been a fan of for a long time. So there's a company called Paradox Interactive. They make it's a game called Vampire the Masquerade. Um, it's in the world of darkness, so they make other games too. But I've always been a player of Vampire the Masquerade. So this opportunity came to actually write a game for them. Instead of being a vampire, they actually asked if I would write from the standpoint of a hunter. So I actually wrote a book called Vampire the Masquerade Out for Blood, where you are a vampire hunter. You move to a small town. Your grandfather left you after he passed away. He left you his shop. So you move back to this small town and you find out that there's vampires that are there. And so no one really believes you. So you kind of take it on yourself to hunt vampires. And um, you can choose uh, a lot of different elements about your character. You can even have kind of mystical abilities. Um, you can even have true faith, which is kind of this uh, divine power that allows you to actually have uh, some additional powers against a vampire, or you can just be, basically, you know, uh, like a science geek who wants to fight vampires, or you could be a soldier who wants to fight vampires. So again, that's where you get to create your own character and then immerse yourself in this world. And most of the people that play my games, they'll play them 20 or 30 times.
Wow.
They won't play once because playing once, you'll only get to see maybe 20% of the game. You have to play it multiple times to see all the different paths. But yeah, writing for that company was kind of like a bucket list or a dream come true because I've been a player of their games for, I don't even know, over 25 years. So to write for them and actually be part of their lore, some of the characters actually are now part of their lure forever.
Wow.
Um, that was just like such an amazing thing for me to do.
So like next thing is what, TSR?
Yeah, right now, I mean, I I don't know. So writing for that type of a company, um, you don't really know what's involved. There's a lot of editors that have to approve everything you do. They go through every single word that you write and make sure that it fits in line with everything they want you to. So, I mean, and there's a lot of delay because they're so busy. So I would hand in writing and it wouldn't come back for 3 months. So, it's a difficult process. I don't want people to think that, it's such a simple thing. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of updates, there's a lot of timelines, which you can't miss. So I actually don't know if I would ever write for another, IP you know, um, like licensing someone else's, um, because for most of my career, I've actually been doing it the other way around, where I'm just creating everything myself. I set my own schedule. I have complete freedom to do anything I want. So even though it was a really kind of gratifying experience and something for the resume, it's not something that I typically look for. So
Well, I mean, it sounds like now you're pretty firmly established, so that's a good thing. But that's the fruits of your labor. You've had to put the time and energy in to get there. So, like I try to remind everybody, you can't start at the top.
yeah, I mean, if like somebody came along and said we want you to write a Star Wars game, maybe I would, they could twist my arm a little bit, but yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm sure and you've kind of hinted about it, but tell us about some struggles along the way.
Well, I guess for me, there's been so, to some degree, there's been some health things that I've had to deal with that always kind of push things back. Um, being fit, like I'm, disabled. I have muscular dystrophy. So over time, I've lost some ability to use my hands. So as a writer, obviously that's a struggle for me. Um, Luckily, technology has allowed me to get to a point where I can do mostly speech to text. So I actually dictate most of my writing now, and then I do have some use of my hands, so I can modify what I've written and edit what I've written. And also, a lot of these books, you also have to write the code for how the choices work and all the features of the game work. So, um, the software that I use to dictate doesn't really do code very well. So I still have to do a lot of hand coding. Um, so that's been a struggle. Also, like I've had some surgeries, I've had some hospital visits, so a lot of times like they've caused me to, have to rush to get out a deadline or, um, you know, when you're sick and you're not feeling well, it's really hard to say, well, I want to go write 2,000 words today, but you have to push yourself. So there were days when I was recuperating from surgery and I'm still like in a hospital bed dictating
Wow.
because to me you have to meet deadlines, but those are the struggles. But luckily for the past few years, my health has been kind of on the upswing and I'm actually feeling really great. And so you know, so even though I've had those kind of struggles, um, I feel like hopefully they're in the past and I've kind of gotten through them, and now they've kind of even given me a more of a push because I know I might have lost some time during those periods. So that's and now it's just really time. Like time is my greatest enemy because I just don't have as much time during the day as I wish I did. But I think that's everybody's issue.
Yeah.
As you get
We're-
older, you're like, I don't have enough time in the day to do anything. So
Yeah, it's weird. No, everybody's having the same issue. It seems like, but you got to make it happen. Like you said, you got to push yourself because otherwise, it's not going to happen. And especially it's in that world that you're in. Deadlines are everything. Your reputation hinges on your ability to meet those deadlines. So I can understand that.
yeah, I tell a lot of younger writers that there's a few things that I always like advice that I always give. And first is um, be consistent. If you tell people that you're going to post to your blog or you're going to put out some kind of writing schedule for them to follow, then you have to do it. Um, like you can't just be like, well, you know what, a new video game came out, and I want to play it with my friends, so I'm not going to get out the writing that I had planned. Or, oh, I forgot that I had, some event that I wanted to go to. Like, no, you plan around those things and you get it done if you want to be successful. If this is a hobby to you, and I don't have a problem with that, there's a lot of people that are hobbyists that are better writers than I am. But the thing that I've done well, I think, is that I've always been consistent. And also, I always interact with my followers. So if you follow me on Twitter or on Facebook or on my website, and you send me an email or you post a message, I get back to you. It might not be that day, but you're not going to have to wait months for me to get back to you. So I think being consistent and communicating with your followers is like two of the biggest things that I've done to influence my career.
That's great advice, and that could be applied also in the world where I find myself in now, which is social networking and the whole thing with social media. And it is important, even on YouTube. It's important to reply. It's important to recognize. It's important to interact.
Hmm.
It's all the difference in the world. And some people get so big that they kind of forget that, unfortunately, and that's sad. But okay, so I guess a few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. But has there been any one person or group of people or even situation that's made a really big impact on you that motivates you? Is there anything that really kind of motivates you to keep going with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few. I mean, I'd say always you know my father had a great work ethic. I think he always worked extremely hard and was a very humble person. And I think humility is a great quality to have. And it's why no matter any success I've had, I always kind of am my own harshest critic, because I think that's kind of something that he always instilled, like you know be self-critical, ask yourself what could you do better. um, so I take a lot of uh, kind of inspiration from the way he lived his life. um, I always talk about Stephen King because he's kind of the godfather of horror writing in America. But I also I've you know read his book on writing, and I've read other things that he's written about his own writing, and kind of the idea of just being fearless, um, and also just writing. Like back when he was I believe he was a school teacher, and he just started writing short stories and trying to get them published, and um, he never stopped, and every rejection just fueled him to continue to keep going and going and going. And so I think, even though it might be cliche to say like Stephen King is a role model, I think it's more about his attitude towards writing that I really agree with. Like you just got to keep writing and don't worry about failing, just keep going. Um, I think they've been the two biggest. I also really like some of the other writers that do the things I'm doing. So other interactive fiction writers, I read a lot of interactive fiction. I try to see, well, what are they doing? What are ideas we could I can maybe take from them. And luckily they do the same. I actually meet with a lot of other writers every few months just to go over things and say, hey, what are you doing? Here's what I'm doing. Kind of learning from one another. I think that's important in a lot of creative endeavors, is to kind of get with other people that are doing what you're doing and try to grow together. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole principle behind the mastermind thing, where a bunch of minds come together and amazing things happen, which is true. I
yeah.
never really believed it until I started realizing for myself. All right, so what do you see? What's next? What's on the horizon? What are some things you really would love to accomplish in the next several years?
So I have a few new games I'm working on. Um, I recently started writing for a company called Storyloom. Um, their games are a little bit more graphical, so um, and they're also a little simpler in the mechanics. So I've been enjoying writing for them. So and also I have other games coming out that are uh, I have another zombie game coming out. I have a game probably after that that's going to be about demons on Earth. Actually, in this one, you could be an angel or a demon because we wanted to have that kind of like classic fight between angels and demons, kind of um, giving you the opportunity to take either role. Um, I, I, my main game, which is Zombie Exodus Safe Haven, um, I don't expect that to be ending anytime soon. So really, it's going to be moving all of these along, and just also taking feedback from my followers and seeing what they'd like me to work on. If they think I should end the game, then I'll put my efforts into others. I think that's the great thing about the way we can interact with people these days. I can kind of talk to my fans and say, what do you think I should do? And they'll let me know, and they'll support me, because they're kind of going there with me.
And it's wonderful to have that sort of relationship with them where you can have that instead of being some person, in an ivory tower somewhere writing stuff out, and you never really get to talk to the people who are actually, consuming your work. So it's good to have that. That's what the type of connection. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're going to wrap it up. But I'll tell you what. Is there any last words you maybe you could say a few words as someone who's watching this that's maybe pretty inspired by what you're doing and maybe he's interested in doing it themselves, but maybe doesn't know where to begin? What would you recommend?
Yeah. So I'd say um, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share links about how to learn um, how to write books like I do. Um, if you have an idea and you don't really know how to get started, um, I can help you with it. There's great forums and there's uh, Discord servers where people talk about games like this. Um, and there's also the company that I write for mostly is called Choice of Games, and you can look them up online. Their forums is also a great place to start. There, there's people there that are more than willing to help uh, discuss games, discuss how to get involved. Um, if you have an idea, um, go to your computer, start writing down those ideas. Don't lose them. Don't say like, well, I had a dream last night. I think it would make a great story, and then forget it, and you lose that idea. Like, get it down on paper, and then yeah, reach out to me or go to choiceofgames.com, and we'll help you get started.
It's fantastic, and I agree with you. You got to write it down. You have to write it down because you always forget. You always do.
Always.
Well, okay, Jim. I think that's all the time we have. But I just want to thank you very much. An awesome, awesome story that's near and dear to my heart, and I look forward to hearing more about more of your future successes. And you're just a testament to hard work, those old traditional values that still endure, and it's still. I keep saying it almost in every show. Those traits of hard work and perseverance still work, and they always will.
Yeah.
So you're a testament to that, Jim.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on your show. I've watched every episode so far, so good luck, and I'm rooting for you too. So
Check is in the mail.
thank you.
Guys, thank you. You've been here watching game writer Jim Dattilo. And if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, like, ring the bells, all that funny, delightful stuff that we do that makes us all know that you're watching us. Jim, again, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to supporting you. And until next time, have a great night.
Thanks, Vin.
Take care, everybody.